All right, guys, we are back. We are doing the Kansas City Chiefs tonight. Let's start off with the signal caller himself, Mr. Patrick Mahomes. Are you going Patrick Mahomes or Russell Wilson and a projected early 23 first?
Mahomes.
Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow and 224 firsts?
Ooh, you got close there, but it's going to be Patrick.
I'd still go Mahomes, but I think if you make one of those a 23, then you're cooking with gas the other side.
Burrow and a 23 first and a 24 first or Mahomes?
Man, how many am I starting?
Starting 10.
Starting 10. I hate tearing down from quarterbacks. This could make me do it, though. This is one that I would likely accept.
Patrick Mahomes or Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson?
Ooh.
Get the wide receiver one there. Here's the thing, right? Wide receiver ones, as much as we love them, are very transient. They aren't the wide receiver ones for very long. I believe Justin Jefferson might be different. I'm going to stick with Patrick in Superflex because it's Superflex, bro.
Yeah, but what is that in startup picks? That's like a early second, late first, and a fourth, something like that. Moving up to get the 102, 103. I don't love the process to do it just because that's not how I want to get to the 103. But I think in a startup, if you're telling me all I have to do is add a fourth or a fifth to get up to the top three, then yeah. I think the more curious one is the deal we talked about before with Burrow. Can you then add one of those first to Burrow and get to like Lamar Jackson? Then you're kind of like, I kind of got a free first out of it, only because I think short term you can see Lamar probably matching any of these guys in scoring.
Patrick Mahomes or Dak Prescott and T. Higgins?
No, I wasn't taking Jefferson and Kirk Cousins. I'm not going to take Dakota and a much lesser receiver. Nope, still going to be Patrick for me.
I think that's probably the similar type of trade. I think most people would prefer Jefferson and Cousins slightly, but I think you could say Dak and Higgins for Jefferson and Cousins. I don't think anybody would be like completely shocked if you took either side, but I still think it's probably the Mahomes side just based on the startup trade value.
All right, so we got a baseline there on Mahomes. Scott, you start us off. What are your thoughts on Mahomes? Is he not the Dynasty QB1 anymore?
Community says it's Allen, but I really don't see the tier between 1, 2, and 3 like everybody else does. Yep. Because I think right now you look at Allen, he is still only 26. He obviously has, I think, the perceived higher upside just because he runs more than the other guys, but you know, how long does that stay sustainable? You know what I mean? To where he's just the clear quarterback one going forward for 5, 6, 7 more years. I just don't see there's a massive difference between the two or between the three, quite frankly. I think the thing with Mahomes, though, that is a little bit underrated is, I mean, he has, maybe we'll see it this year, he has probably like a 500-yard rushing season in his repertoire over the next couple of years. I don't know if he can get to 500, but I wouldn't be shocked if like he's not a zero in the running game. And I don't think it's a guarantee that Josh Allen is 700-800 yards every season either. So it's not like there's this massive gap between the two just because of the rushing. Right now, last year it was like 40 points. It could be 15 this year. And you'd be like, oh, okay, that makes sense because Mahomes ran a little more. Allen ran a little bit less. Allen also has, I think, the perception that his offense is just going to be this massively high volume offense. Whereas, do the Chiefs want to do that? I've already heard some narratives this year about, well, the Chiefs don't want to pass as much as they had to last year because their running game was really bad. But couldn't you say the same thing about the Bills? You know what I mean? Like, I think you could say the same thing about all three of these offenses. The more that I think about it, I'm more intrigued with the capacity that the Chiefs have to be a little bit of a different offense than what we've seen in the past couple of years. But I think the Chiefs might have the chance to be an offense that we don't really know what it's going to look like because of the weapons and they lost Tyreek. But what if they just end up better? What if they end up more efficient because they have 4 or 5 guys to go to now instead of 2? For fantasy, we're going to go, well, that's not good because we don't know which receiver they're going to throw it to. But for Mahomes, that could end up being one of his better seasons. So I think that's one thing. The only other thing that kind of gives me pause between all three of these guys is what happens when Mahomes loses Kelce. I think that's the biggest thing. What if Kelce just is 30% less than what he is going forward or what he has been? What does that do to the offense? What do they need to do to kind of supplement the rest of the weapons? So we'll get into the weapons, but that's the one thing we don't know. Like, we don't know if you just take Kelce out of there and you just say, hey, it's 3 or 4 receivers. Is Mahomes going to be as dominant to keep him at the QB1 spot? I don't know, but I think it's a good question.
It's a good question, but the answer is yes. He's wide receiver, QB1, not just QB1, top 6 QB every season of his career with Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. And Tyreek Hill was not a heralded prospect, wasn't a good college prospect. He wasn't anything. Patrick Mahomes made him. He's fast. That's all he is. He's not special. Patrick Mahomes made him. When you were talking about his wide receiver core now with Juju, okay, great underneath guy, MVS, great guy to stretch the field, and Sky Moore, a guy that can literally do everything on the field, even though they'll probably play him out of the slot a little bit. I'm literally have no concerns once Zeus is gone. We've seen what Mahomes can do with Byron Pringle, DeMarcus Robinson, and some other trash cans. Like, it's not the players around him, you know what I mean, that are elevating his game. He elevates everyone around him. So I'm really not concerned at all, once Zeus is gone.
I do agree with that too, because you look at the efficiency numbers that I usually quote on here from last year. Mahomes was by far the best of the three between Allen, Herbert, and Mahomes. You can probably say this year his weapons across the board, like 1 through 6, are better than they were last year. Mm-hmm. It's just, are any of them going to be able to make up close to even 75% of what Tyreek was?
Are you going Travis Kelce or a 23 first?
23 first.
Wow. I mean, I think it does depend on the format. If it's just 1.5.
1.5 tight end premium projected mid.
Start 10. I'm not giving up a 23 first for Kelce.
Dawson Knox, Darnell Mooney, and a 23 second for Travis Kelce.
Travis Kelce.
Yeah, now that's like 3 dimes trying to equal 2 quarters.
Those are dimes. Those are like fake coins, like that your kids
like
make.
Buffalo nickels.
Yeah, no, not even the worse than that. Like your kids make it when they're little, and you're like, dude, this doesn't even look like a real dollar.
The ones they make at the museum that cost you like $3, and it turns out to be like a fake coin. No, I think that's getting too cute to accept that type of package. I don't want to trade Kelce away unless it's a 2-for-1, and it's where I'm potentially getting one piece that I could squint and say becomes close to the impact of Kelce. It doesn't have to be a tight end, but it's not a wide receiver 3 and a tight end 10 and a second. That just seems like you're just trading to trade.
So what about Pat Freiermuth and a 24 first or Travis Kelce?
I think that's where I probably lean the process in the 1.5. Just betting on there's going to be a chance that I can maybe buy a guy like Waller for cheaper or something like that, to where it's like, man, I didn't take too bad of a hit at tight end, but I still gained value. Shane probably agrees. That's probably the best deal you're ever going to get for Kelce. So if it's in your inbox, probably. It's like, yeah, you just take it.
Yeah, just make sure you trade Freiermuth before the season starts, and everyone realizes that his touchdown's not going to be, 10% of his catches next year.
That's Kelce. Scott, what are your thoughts on him?
I mean, we can actually keep it pretty brief because he's past his prime. But he's really not, because the position as a whole is pretty much stagnant at the top other than Pitts. So by default, he's the tight end 3. Andrews, I think, is cemented as the tight end 2, regardless of what he does. Like, he's been so efficient for his career that he's just going to sit in the top 3 probably until he's Travis Kelce's age. But is Andrews ever going to be a guy that replaces Kelce's production for like 5 or 6 straight years where he's just the tight end 1 over and over and over? Probably not. So it's like you go to rank tight ends and you're just going like, okay, well, who do I put number 3? And it's got to be Kelce. But then you acknowledge that as soon as you take him, you're getting to this point where it's like, man, how can I trade him? So he's a really hard player to value. I think the only time I want to touch him is existing leagues where I'm contending and I can get him when someone else doesn't want him. In a startup, even if it's like 2 PPR, I'm not going to be the guy that's like, oh, I need a tight end, so I'm going to take him in the 2nd round. You know what I mean? I'm just not going to go down that road if I can set myself up not taking that direction. But I'll certainly buy, and I think the bet if you buy for a 23 first during the season is he's going to give me another season, to where maybe there's a 1 month window where I can get a 24 first for him the next year, and you just got to play it year by year. Because the thing is, even though he's going to be, he'll be 34 in this season, at the end of this season, 33 at the end of this season. Who's to say he doesn't play this way until he's 36?
They totally could.
And you just get 3 more years of this, and his value's on the decline. And then every January, everybody goes, well, I don't want Kelce. He's old. It's like, okay, then I'll just hold on to him until he literally is done. So it's like, it could be another Jason Witten, but like 30% better until he just up and retires.
Yeah, he's one of those types of players like who may like die on your roster, but that's also not a bad thing. He's going to score a lot of freaking points on your roster before he dies. Shane, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean that's the decision you need to make. Okay, am I okay with Kelce dying on my roster? And we've talked about this before. There's nothing wrong with that. There's some players that just look, the production's going to outweigh whatever you can get on the trade market. If you can get a 23 first for him, though, you got to move him. If you can get a Freiermuth and a 24 first or someone in that range, you got to move them, especially someone that, like Freiermuth that the community really likes, whether you like them or not.